Francisco. When I became citizen, they make it Frank Delo. I was born in the Philippines, Cuyapo, northeast of Manila.
And I'm Frank Jr. Yeah, I was born in Chicago, city of Chicago, and then that's when we came out here to the suburbs. And yeah, this whole FMA thing is kind of my connection back to a culture that I'm from but never grew up in, like, directly. It's kind of nice to reclaim a bit of cultural identity like that. Dad started teaching me through play when I was a little kid. Every little boy loves some kind of combat play. Back in that day it was Ninja Turtles and He-Man and that kind of stuff. Characters swinging around weapons, so it was kind of an easy thing to introduce. So the way I remember it growing up, it was just we were playing swords, and then it wasn't until I hit adulthood and I started cross training with other people and hitting seminars and like, oh, this is actually like a system, because I'm recognizing these movements that people are teaching me from other sides. Like, oh, this looks exactly like what Dad taught. So for me, it was kind of an organic, like, I didn't know I was learning a martial art until later, and it was already kind of in there.
When I was 7 years old, my cousin, who was a World War II veteran, teach me how to do the judo. They called it jujitsu before. And then he teach me Arnis de manos, cinco tiros. And then I grew up until I was in college in the 60s. I opened up some suburban school of martial arts, and I teach cinco tiros and judo, and a little bit of Okinawan karate. So it's a mix.
So, like a lot of kids in my generation, I did taekwondo back in the day, back in the 90s. That was back when people still punished each other with taekwondo instead of like the kind of pitter-patter tag games. Like, we would routinely come home with blood and stuff. And so different era. I'm also a musician, and that kind of led my next pursuits, because I didn't want to advance in a martial art that was going to destroy my hands. So it kind of led me down the path of like so-called soft styles, Chinese internal arts, and Chinese martial arts in general, because they have their methods of being able to use your body without totally destroying it. In most of the systems, there's an attitude towards like holistic body health, even into old age. So, and then of course playing with the other instructors at the school with their respective arts. My business partner is a wrestler, so we've crossed hands a lot. Other instructors here is JKD, Choi La Foot, Shaolin Kung Fu. We've had Muay Thai and various MMA people come through here. We've crossed hands and exchange info. So my main pursuits are, outside of FMA, have been mainly the Chinese internal arts, but we enjoy playing a lot of different styles in here and learning from each other.
I was 7 years old when they started me this jiu-jitsu in the farm, because those are the sports, And I become very bad when I learned this judo in Arnis. I became a street fighter. so my family called me a black sheep of the family. And then I went to college, and then I learned some more, and then opened up a school. So it's like my life is like a fighter or something. It's like in the family. My father was a fighter in the farm. You see, over there in the farm, if you want to teach your Arnis, they have to go to my father to test them. If they pass my father, they can teach. But nobody can teach them, because my father was really that good. he always defeated those inspiring instructors in the farm. So I think he is the only one who can teach in there, because nobody can get in there without passing through to him. In the Philippines, parents like my father did not teach me what his knowledge about Arnis. No, they do not do that. I don't know why, because they are thinking their sons might become a bad guy, you know, so they do not teach that Arnis. There are just few parents there that teach their kids their knowledge of self-defense. I think that is their discipline to themselves. They don't want their kids to learn that kind of fighting, you know.
Then you can just pass it and counter. I mean, I always had his influence to kind of level-headed and broad about what I was learning. Try not to buy into any teacher or system too much. You know, like learning the information, but try not to overblow their influence. I feel like that's kind of a trap I've seen where people conflate their own skill in learning with personality cult or, you know, whatever other trappings. You know, it's across a lot of different arts, a lot of different environments. There was always somebody at home I could test some of the information, understand it from, you know, an experience point of view. You know, but for the most part, you know, Dad's treated me like my own person. You know, I have my own direction and pursuits, my own understanding of things. I get to forge my own path, make my own mistakes, you know, and we figure it out as a family too. 1, 2. Amalgam isn't only the FMA. We brought together all of our different information from me and the different instructors we have here into like a unified thing. So our family system is part of what you learn here, but you know, the experience is bigger, and I try to unify it with all the other stuff here. So even though it's different curriculum, you start to understand the similarities of the fundamental or underlying fundamentals that are the same. But if you come to the school, you're getting more than just me. But I'm happy to go out and share my portion of that knowledge, and then if people want, you know, information from any of the other instructors and their specializations, we, you know, send them out too.
In the Philippines, there are a lot of style. If you go around there, like in Bulacan, Cabanatuan City, Isabela, those northeast, they got different style too. But this we are teaching here in the Arnis Cinco Tiros, this is the short casual style. It's a close fighting. So that was what I learned. Close fight. The history of that is that when people started that style, they fight inside the
pit.
Yeah, outfit. They fight inside there, so nobody can retreat. So they just fight close fight. That is the history of our style. Single stick, short stick. So because the long cudgel or stick, you have to have enough space to fight. But this one we are teaching here in the short cudgel is for close fighting. That's why when we fight here, you notice it is always within the reach of your arm, you know.
It's interesting. We've played with different styles, and it's true. There's some styles that are used to having more ground to maneuver in, and it was interesting seeing people like oh, I have to be in a different mode of distance now, and people are fighting up close, and it gave people more to adjust to in competition, you know. But then I've seen people in other tournaments with, like, you know, a whole gymnasium you can run around in, and it's like there's a lot of different strategies they use to manage distance. I feel like for me, you know, like I naturally gravitated to knife stuff because of the closeness of it. And then, when we're demonstrating together, sometimes I'm even crowding, I'm even crowding in because I'm still thinking of knife distance when I'm holding the stick. The 80s.
Yeah, it is 83, 84.
I think people's taste in martial arts were different back then. People looking for other traditional styles. And then you were saying before, like, the material was confusing for a lot of the American students.
I found a Kudokan Judo here in Chicago. I joined that club, and then some guys there, the American guys, they asked me if I know how this stick fighting. So I said, I can teach you a little bit, So they started coming into our basement before, that new house we got now. But they could hardly understand it because they are used to the judo. It's very hard for them to understand the stick.
Couldn't think outside of their style.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because we've talked about this before. Since I started teaching, like I'm finding a lot of the same issues coming up, like things about rhythm and moving your hands and feet, and like some things that they feel like they make a lot of sense to me, but trying to find effective ways to teach it to a different audience with a different cultural mindset. Like I'm fighting to find ways to get the dots connected.
You see, the students here, I always show them the foot step, but they still could hardly get it. Sometimes they are stuck in there like this. Right. They do not move their feet. See? So I always correct them, move your feet, because that is dodging the strike. You see? Like
your movement keeps you safe.
But still, it's very hard to learn.
My bachelor's is in education, so for me it was kind of a challenge. Like, how do I communicate this? How do I use those tools to help the students? So a lot of what you see me doing on the mat is trying to break things down to smaller chunks so that we can connect it back later. And some people still get stuck even with just like switching feet. So the way I wrote it in the book and the way I teach it to start is just hands move, feet move. You don't even need to go anywhere in particular. Just don't get stuck on the ground, And because some we've had some beginners. I'm sure this is with other styles too, but we're talking like complete dead beginners with no martial arts experience and hardly any like athletic movement experience. So they don't really even know their body yet. So I've had to scale back a lot of like, how do I teach just basic athletic movement to people who have never done that? So it's just in the context of martial arts. So, and then we find once the students have played enough with the really small chunks, we go back and we can look at the main fundamental principles, like what Dad shows. It's like, okay, now I get it because I'm seeing the feet move and they're moving in a certain way, but I understand what's happening and why a little bit more. And then we can build communicating that type of movement to Western audience.
They want to learn it, but they are stuck with the hand technique, but the movement of the feet, nothing. Just hand technique like this. Sometimes they do it like a spatula,
Like they're cooking.
Yeah, scoop.
They block it like this. I mean, that's spatula, You block it like this, But they want to learn it, really.
Yeah, it's exciting to see how interested people are in pursuing these arts now. I feel like we've seen a real uptick in the interest of Filipino martial arts. Regardless of their goals, the fundamentals are going to be the same. So that's why I tend to focus a lot on the fundamental principles and ideas of movement, because we can plug that in and direct it to a specific goal later. And we have both both types and everyone in between in here. Like some people, like we just had an influx of new Filipino students, and their goal, their stated purpose was they want to start connecting to the culture more, their home, their native culture. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to necessarily teach you, you know, the stabbing lethal organs or whatever right away. So we can scale, you know, and I try to do that on the fly as people circulate partners and like try to adapt skill levels and goals. And then some days we focus class on a little more pressure testing oriented things, like, okay, let's take these principles, all these same ideas, but now we're in the back hallway and you have to escape with minimal damage. You know, once the weather starts warming up, we have the back parking lot. It's less well lit, you know, different environment. You know, we have this volume of knowledge now and footage of real life violence. You know, it's not some mystery that only a handful of people ever touch on. Like, this information is available to everyone. So the people who want to go down that path and really understand their art in context of life and death, we look at those things. We try to appropriately crank up the pressure so that they can explore some of that. You know, at the end of the day, I tell people, like, we all have day jobs, and nobody wants to go to work the next day with, you know, broken or bruised if they can help it. But, you know, if that's the goal of their training, I want to honestly explore it. I like to think we scale appropriately based on the goals, but it's still, to me, it still boils down to those same fundamentals. It's just how you use those tools and in what context.
Even you get older, you carry a cane, and that will be helpful for self-defense too. Yeah, so, but they will learn. I can see them. You know, they are learning.
Well, I'd like to keep the school open to start. I mean, I guess that's a goal of everyone opening a school. I would like to make the information as widely available as I'm able to. Last year, I released my first book, you know, the basic book on our system, like covering a lot of the fundamentals. That's kind of my first big effort outside of the school to make that available. You know, we're working on online resources, just so, you know, people can try to learn from where they are if they're not nearby, or if I'm too far to travel. But part of my goal, I want to be able to use my material to help people from every other FMA system and be able to give some other, like, communication tool, because a lot of us are teaching very similar movements and principles. They have different history, different background, but it's still, to me, it's all still Filipino martial arts. I see that in tournaments all the time. We all have different styles, but when the bell rings and you go in, everyone starts with that big angle one swing. Right? I mean, we're not entirely that different. But for me, as a teacher, I want to help other teachers be able to communicate those ideas, at least have other options to communicate. Because I feel like I've run into teachers who, they're very good at what they do, but maybe how they communicate it is limited, or because we share a lot of ideas, but I want to make them as understandable and broad so that everyone can help a broader audience. You know, I mean, that's my goal in here, but if it helps the wider world of FMA grow their ranks and share the value of their art with a bigger audience, like that's what I would like my work to do.